start this workshop this evening, so we appreciate those that are in attendance. Hopefully this is our final workshop for the year. We'll be going August 1st City Council meeting with the tentative budget, and then 2 weeks after that for the final. So there was some lingering questions, discussion council wanted to have in regards to Caldwell Police Department wage proposal. So that is why we're here this evening. So before we do jump into presentation, I think Chief Sopoaga has a slide presentation, and you have a copy of that before you. So before we do jump into that, I just want to make kind of a few comments, and then we'll get into that discussion and kind of see where council, and again, this is council's decision, prerogative, and which way you want to go and how you want to do with this. So just a few things to highlight is there's different proposals that are out there. I know there's been a lot kind of thrown around this week, so to be honest, I'm not sure where we landed at right now, what percentage. I know there's a lot of different numbers out there. So just a reminder to the council, and actually real quick, Councillor McGee, just want to check, make sure that you were there with us.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. And does Councillor McGee have a copy of this? Do we know? Do you have a copy of the, probably not a hard copy, but at least an email copy of the proposal that we have here?
Mayor, I don't have it in front of me, but if someone wants to email that to me, I can just take a look at it.
Okay. Debbie, I think, is going to email it to you right now so that you have that so you can follow along with us. So just, again, a few things to highlight that I think are important to note as we go through this discussion is that we are in process of a wage study that was commenced several months back. We plan on that being wrapped up within the next 1 to 2 months. So the original proposal for the entire city, including the police department, fire is separate because, as you know, that's a unionized on that, but we'll be meeting with them in the near future as well. So the original proposal was a 5% increase for all city employees, and then a set aside 6% for implementing that wage study. Now, when we say that 6%, I think a lot of people think in their head that means everybody's going to get a 6% raise after the 5%, and that's not the case. So the 6% was set aside as what was the best guesstimate that we could come up with as far as what the total amount would be. So after that wage study, there may be some employees that come in and they show, that they're spot on with, Nampa, Meridian. So that's kind of where that wage study is at, is taking into account, the 3 cities bigger than us, the 3 cities smaller than us, and comparing that, making sure that we are competitive in regards to the wages that we offer our employees. And that's would be after the 5%. That was just a flat increase for everybody. And then looking at that wage study and each position, like I said, some of them may come back where, they're actually pretty even with, Nampa and Meridian, these other cities of similar size in that regards. And there are others that could come back where they're 20% or 25% off. So you could have employees that actually get a 20% raise on top of the 5% raise. So that is the reason why that holdback was, so that we could, rather than just doing a blanket, whatever, across the board, the 5% blanket and then an additional holdback to get everybody on a level playing field. So we don't have some people that are employees that are overpaid compared to their counterparts at other cities, leaving other people perhaps underpaid compared to the other cities. And so that is the reason why that was put forward on that proposal for the 5% flat and then a holdback of approximately 6% to make sure that we are competitive in every aspect for every position throughout the city in regards to that. So as we go through this tonight, I know there's some proposals different from that from the police, and so we respect that and look forward to discussing that with them. But I also would note, as you discuss this and look through this and think of this, that even though we are just focusing on police tonight, there is a trickle-down effect. And so, it's not uncommon for if one department gets one division of a company gets one set of raise, other divisions are going to look at that and hope and expect the same as well. So, the fire department, for example. So we're going to have to look at that and see, do we need to look at that and give them whatever that increase, or comparing that to the other cities to make sure that they're on par, and even all the employees at the city. we got to be careful to not create too much disparity between one division or department and others in the city, so that we want to take care of all the employees in the city. I love our men and women in blue and what they do for us and the services that they provide. And they're an integral and important part of the city, as is, every other division in the city, from our finance department to our planning and zoning, our building department to the fire department and all that. So those are, I think, things to make sure that we do include in our discussion. Like I said, even though it is focused on police tonight, so that would just be my kind of opening comments on that. And I do look forward and appreciate. I know that Chief Sopoaga and Chief Ingram, and I'm sure many others, have put countless hours and time into this, and we appreciate that. I know it's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of meetings this week. Chief Ingram is in Boston, wrapping up his meetings there. I think is he joining us via Zoom, or is he at all in your hands tonight, Chief Sopoaga?
Mayor, I'm on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. So I apologize for not introducing you sooner, Chief Ingram. We appreciate you taking some time away. I think they had some fun things planned tonight, so we apologize that maybe you had to miss out on some of that. This might not be as fun, but obviously very important, and we appreciate you being there and what you're doing back in Boston. I know is very, very important to the department, and continue to advance the great things that you've started in the department and the changes that you've implemented. So we appreciate you being here on that. And so that is all I have to say at this moment. So I'm guessing that Chief Ingram, are we turning it over to you or Chief Sopoaga?
I'll take the lead, Mayor.
Okay, perfect, excellent. So it is the mic is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. I appreciate really you guys accommodating Boston. And let me just go back to some of your previous comments on, missing out on fun. Nothing is more fun to me as the Chief of Police to watch our brave men and women succeed and get rewarded for the selfless sacrifice and the dedication that they exhibit every single day. I know that coming into this, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation, but to be quite honest with you, I don't know what the latest is. I've seen so many different proposals floating around, and it's actually, I'm ready for this. And I have all the confidence, and I want to Chief Sopoaga and as well as Raylan North, our finance director, for her all of her dedication to making sure that everything is in line for tonight. So first and foremost, I understand I've been doing this job for almost 20 years, and law enforcement officers are the most visible form of government in America. They stand between good and evil. They answer the call of duty when everyone else is running away from the call of duty. Not to say that other departments and stuff aren't equally as important, but I'm talking about equity. And equity is a redistribution of resources to make everyone have a fair playing field. These officers that are working for the city of Caldwell have been suffering in silence for decades, 4 decades. As we currently stand right now, they are 16% behind Nampa and the Cannon County Sheriff's Office. 16%. Not to mention, Nampa will be getting a 6% raise by the end of this year. So that'll be a 22% over what we currently are today. Now, I've been in lockstep with you, Mayor, the entire time. I was intending on waiting for the wage study to come back, and I'm excited about the wage study. However, the last a week and a half or 2 weeks, I've been thinking long and hard about this after council asked some very valid questions that, based on their concerns. Prior to my departure to Boston, I presented with Chief Sopoaga on our needs, what we currently need. And there's a lot of deficiencies, but as the executive officer of the entire agency in the department, I would be remiss if I didn't come here and fight for the people that have no voice. And 13% is what the finance director has told the chief and I that we can actually spend on for a wage increase. Now, there's a lot of things. I think 13% is not enough, but I also am very reasonable, and I'm also a realist. I want the council to know that what Chief Sopoaga is going to be explaining to them tonight in his presentation will be for a 13% increase right now. That's what the 5% COLA and 7%. Thank you for doing a good job and what you guys do to keep us safe. There's been a lot of critical incidents over the last several months. But I want to remind the council that prior to my appointment, July 1st of last year, every single news headline with the Caldwell Police Department put a stain on law enforcement in the state of Idaho. Look at the news now. Look at where we've come. Our rank and file is at full capacity. That's not because of me. That's because you have dedicated men and women, both professional staffers and sworn officers, that come to work every single day and do the best thing that they can do so we don't have shootings, we don't have gang violence, we don't have retaliatory shootings, we don't have mass shootings in schools. We are investing in our people. And if we wait for the wage study to come back, I can tell you that based on all the information that I have through all of my professional counterparts in the Treasure Valley and in the state of Idaho, because I've traveled across the country talking about the future of policing, the 21st century of law enforcement operations, that we are significantly behind. We are already 16% behind. So if we currently have a budget that will allow for a 13% immediate increase and keep all the positions that we've asked for without cutting anything, I think it's a win-win for the city and it's a win-win for the officers. If we wait, which that's the council's decision and your decision too, Mr. Mayor, but if we wait and we come back at 20% less than our counterparts because they will be getting raises in the next six months, I don't think that our budget will sustain that. I don't know if there's enough money to give everyone a 20% raise, a 15% raise, an 18% raise, but I'm confident and I stand by my deputy chief and by the numbers that have been given to me by our finance director to sustain a 13% raise as it stands right now. Now, there's a lot of things that I would like to ask for. I'm not going to, because I respect council's time. I respect your time, Mr. Mayor. And I'm just trying to be as fiscally responsible with our department as possible. I know there's going to be other agencies and other departments in the city that may be upset, may feel like they're not getting, their fair share, but then they need to articulate that. Like we are very committed to taking care of our employees, and our employees have been suffering in silence, like I said, and enough is enough for us as a city. We need to take care of our people and stand by the brave work that they do every day. And I'll stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate that very much. Questions from any council members? Councilor McGee, any questions from you?
Not yet, man. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. So taking it easy on you so far, Chief. Very good. Deputy Chief, yes, you want to please come forward? And did you get that email, Councilor McGee, with the presentation?
I've got it right here. Thank you.
Perfect. Excellent.
Mr. Mayor, council members, it's kind of been a longer road than we expected, but I really appreciate you guys being willing to hear from us as far as our wage proposal. Before we start, I really have to recognize Raylan North and Shelley. I've been speaking with them off and on, and we've been communicating, but at times we don't agree, at times we do agree, but in the end they've been working really hard, and we've been working really hard together because we understand that for them it's obviously the whole city, and for me, I think about the whole city, but realistically my priority is the police department. So moving forward with this presentation tonight, the real goal is to obviously increase our police officer wages and to remain competitive within the Treasure Valley. I think the real important thing in our goal is to remain competitive within the Treasure Valley. I understand the wage study, and that is an amazing thing, but for us, we aren't measuring ourselves against anyone else in the state except for people who are in the Treasure Valley. In Ada County, there's really the big three. There's us, there's Nampa, and there's CCSO. In Ada County, there's Boise, Garden City, Meridian, and obviously the Sheriff's Office and ISP. That's who we're competing against. So in this presentation, I hope that I make it clear as far as why we deserve a pay increase. And a lot of it has to do with really the factor of remaining competitive within the Valley. So I took a case study because I know when we spoke at the last meeting, you guys wanted to see some comparisons between the Nampa Police Department as well as the Canyon County Sheriff's Office. So in tonight's presentation, you obviously have a handout we provided for the PowerPoint. I'm going to be going over some comparisons of crime trends, calls for services, pay schedules, and then as well as benefits between the Caldwell Police Department, the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, and the Nampa Police Department. So if you go to the next 3 pages, it's not in my PowerPoint. I didn't include it in there, but you guys have it as part of your attachment. So basically it gives you the schedule for police officer wages, for corporal wages, and for sergeant and above wages, and the comparisons with our pay scale. So first of all, I want to start off with the workload. So I compiled some information, and if we look at the calls for service between all of the agencies, and the calls for service include any call that the dispatch gets. I didn't separate them by Group A crimes or Group B crimes. They're just all the calls that came in. So the calls you see up there are from 2023 year to date. So from January 1 to today's date is what the calls for service say. So at the Caldwell Police Department, so far we have taken 24,681 calls for service. The Nampa Police Department has taken 41,738 calls for service, and CCSO has taken 26,569 calls for service. I added the populations in there. Caldwell were about 70,000, Nampa's 117,000, and CCSO, as far as their area unincorporated, is 66,000. I also added the sworn officers in there, and what I wanted to show here, by what's highlighted in red, is the average call per officer. So I did that by taking the calls for service and then dividing it by how many officers we have. So if you look at the workload right now, year to date, on average, our officers, each officer has taken 312 calls for service. The Nampa Police Department, they obviously have a lot more resources, so they took 289 calls for service per officer. CCSO, they're equal with us, and they took 312 calls for service per officer. As we get into crime statistics, you will see in your packet, I attached the Idaho State Police came up with their 2022 crime data report, and so you'll see those crime reports in there for the Nampa Police Department, for Caldwell Police Department, and for the Canyon County Sheriff's Office. So what you have in front of you is pretty much the overview if you look at those sheets I provided on the side. So the overview is basically the total offenses. So what really sticks out for me here is the percentage of change from 2021 crime to 2022 crime. What's highlighted in red is you can obviously see that the Caldwell Police Department has gone up 20% in total offenses. Nampa Police Department has gone up only 6%. And the Sheriff's Office has actually gone down 4%. Now this is total offenses and calls coming in from the community. And the chief really harps on this because he really puts it in this perspective. People are calling the police more because they trust us now. They have a lot more trust, they're calling us more, and that's why the calls are going up. But we are responding to those calls for service no matter what our staffing levels are, and we're doing a great job continuing to move forward. So this is the total arrest for last year between the 3 departments. I highlighted the percentage of change as far as arrest goes from 2021 to 2022. Now, I'm not saying arrests tell the story, but basically you can see that the Nampa Police Department and the Canyon County Sheriff's Office have gone down in their arrest rate. Although our calls for service have gone up 20%, we have maintained our level of service and continue to fight crime on the street. We're out of these 3 agencies, we are the only agency that have gone up in arrest stats. So what I'm saying is, I know we want to look at the workload and compare ourselves to these other 2 agencies who, although they're bigger, they definitely have more resources at this time. So I would make the argument that we actually do a lot more work than they do. So we'll go on to benefits because I know we wanted to get into benefits. So I only stayed with some of the common ones because there's a lot of little nuances for departments as far as benefits go, but I wanted to get the benefits that we equally all 3 agencies have. So the uniform allowance, for us, our SWAT members get $1,300 and our officers get $1,000 a year. And so that's paid out in one check. Nampa Police Department is similar to us. They get about $1,000 as far as their uniform allowance a year. And CCSO, they come under, they're at $300. For vehicle assignments, basically, we do kind of a ride share program for patrol. So during our work week, our officers who are on patrol are allowed to take the patrol vehicle home. When they're off, their partner on the opposite end of the schedule will have control of that vehicle. So they switch back and forth. Our specialty position, everyone's assigned a permanent vehicle, and they kind of have that until they either leave and go back to patrol, or they have it continuously if they're in that assignment. The Nampa Police Department, they do a ride share as well, but they don't take their vehicles home. It's parked at the Nampa Police Department, and they just come to work every day, and that's how they use their vehicles. For the specialty positions, it's the same as us. They're assigned a permanent vehicle. For the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, they're the only agency out of the three so far that, whether they're on patrol or a specialty position, they have a permanently assigned vehicle. So everyone that's sworn personnel driving on the street, they do have their own personal vehicles. Longevity pay. Longevity pay is really what separates us from some of the other agencies. I'll actually start with Nampa Police Department. So they get 75 cents added to their pay rate at 10 years, $1.25 added to their base rate at 15 years, and $1.75 added to their base pay at 20 years. So CCSO, they don't have an actual documented longevity pay, but if you look at your pay scale on year 5, that's kind of their longevity pay, because they jump from $31 an hour to $39 an hour. And that's when they go from deputy to senior deputy. So talking with some of the CCSO administration, that is pretty much, they said that's their longevity being built in at year 5. For us, this is a great benefit. This is one we do not want to get rid of. We have talked with our rank and file, and it is one of the better benefits that I have seen. So as far as our longevity, we get 0.5% for every year of service. So if you have 10 years of service here, then you get 5%. You also get $1,000. So a scenario is if you have 10 years, you get 5% and $1,000. So that is paid out quarterly. So you take the annual total and you pay it out 4 times a year. Our police officers love that, and they do want to keep that incentive, and they do want to keep that calculation. So medical coverage. I looked into medical coverage, and if you look at the chart, this is basically the premiums that police officers or really city employees are paying. So for CCSO, you can see theirs is bi-monthly, so you have to multiply that number by 2. In this, I think we're pretty competitive in this arena. I think CCSO is really the only one. Nampa's, we're pretty much the same, if not better. I think they have a health trust. So for each officer at Nampa PD, the city contributes $19,000, and they put into their health trust each year. So they're able to buy down rates or negotiate as they move forward, which is a good benefit. Specialty pay. This is kind of where we're lacking, and this is where the other 2 agencies really make ground on this. So we'll start with the Nampa Police Department. Pretty much any assignment that you get outside of patrol, you're getting 5% for. So the list is up there. The field training officers get 3%. The K-9 supervisor gets 3%. The arson investigator, SWAT operator, drug recognition expert, crisis negotiation, bilingual pay, sign language, they all get 2%. The interesting thing about Nampa PD's specialty pay is they're allowed to accumulate up to 10%. So they could be a criminal investigations and a field training officer and the SWAT team, and they can get up to 10%. The also great benefit that they have is they're vested at that rate after 4 years. So if you're an FTO for 4 years, and at 4 years you decide I want to be an FTO anymore, you're still going to get the 3% for the rest of your career. So it's a really great benefit, and really where they make up a lot of ground on other agencies, especially us. CCSO, they do it in an annual one-time payment. So their criminal investigations get $5,600. Their K-9s get $2,300. Their FTOs get $2,000, and their SWAT operators all get $1,500 a year. Now, trying to figure out what incentives that we have regarding specialty pay was pretty difficult, and actually I was pretty disappointed. So the only specialty pay we have is our FTOs get 0.7 hours for each day that the FTO has a trainee. So let's say the FTO has a trainee today and they work 12 hours. Well, they get credit for 12.75 hours. The canines, they receive half an hour each day for dog care. So every day they get half an hour for taking care of the dog. It's 3.5 hours a week. So, I mean, we're really lacking in the specialty pay, and this is where we're really falling behind, because if you really look at the numbers in the scale, let's take Nampa PD, for instance. They're already pretty high on the pay rate, but you throw some of these incentives in there, plus the 4 to 6% that they're most likely going to get, we're going to keep falling behind. So I know the chief had mentioned this, but what I did to get this calculation is for the police officer up there, it's the top left corner, I took the 3 highest pay. So our highest pay, CCSO's highest pay for deputy, and the NPD's highest pay for their officer. I compared them, and this was what I found. The CCSO deputy at their highest rate gets paid 19% more from that base rate than our officer. An NPD officer gets paid 8% more than our highest officer. I did the same calculation for the corporals. CCSO corporals get paid 19% more on that base rate, more than our corporals do. And then the NPD corporals get paid 15% more than our corporals do. I think the really discouraging stat is really with the sergeants, because these are the people we are expecting to lead our agency. And there is a huge discrepancy when you take a look at the statistics. So a CCSO sergeant at the base rate makes 23% more than our sergeant at our highest pay rate. An NPD sergeant makes 16% more. And what I'm saying, keep in mind, is they're all getting COLAs coming up too. So the ball is already moving. I took the average of all these 3, and that's how we got the 16%. So the chief already went over our wage proposal. We're asking for 13% across the board. We want to keep the current pay schedule. We're willing to take a look at any new schedules, because if you look at our pay schedule, there are too many steps in there. If you look at Nampa's, they only have 1 corporal step, where we have like 9 steps to get there to the top. So we have been working on getting a new pay scale. We just haven't had one. So until we can really find one and agree on one, we want to keep it as is. We do want to keep the longevity calculation, and that is the 0.5% for years of service plus the $1,000. I talked to our rank and file. They're not opposed to putting it into the pay rate, but they want the calculation to stay the same. And so I think fire has a similar calculation where you can see the pay rate, you can see your longevity, and then you can see what the rate with the longevity in it is. They don't want to lose control of that, because they were doing some math, and it seems like when you put it into the pay rate, over 2 or 3, 4 years, you would be getting less money than you would on the same calculation we use now. With the lieutenants, our chief understands they need to go to salary. He's not opposed to that. He just wants to make sure that we come up with a way to really compensate them fairly for going to salary, because when you go from hourly to salary, they're probably losing 14 to 20% of their wages from that overtime. So I don't know what the answer is to that, but I know that we should probably work on it, and if we can't come up with something, then we should probably leave it the same. We want to maintain our proposed positions, which we asked for 6 police officers, a crime analyst, victim witness coordinator, and an SRO. So on the back of your packets, I showed what it would look like with 13%, and that's just the base. Obviously, if we build the longevity into that rate, we would really be in a good position, and that's the reason why we requested it at 13%. So I really want to thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to our wage proposal. I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks so much, Chief. Appreciate that. Questions from council? Mr. Stoddard.
I just don't really have a question, Deputy Chief. As most of you know, been on the council before with a break in between, but I think the reason we're at where we're at right now is, I think in the past, a lot of departments did not get raises just to make the levy rate look good, and I never agreed with that the 4 years I was on here before. But anyway, it's a shame we have to be in this position right now. But again, I think it's just the sins of the past is where it got it here. So we definitely have to catch up. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Register?
I have a question. Are you not asking for specialty pay?
Not this year, no.
Okay, so that, okay. And then, the other question I had, I guess just for finance, is this is something the city can afford? Okay. Okay, well, I think, just comments then, I also want to keep in mind that, with the growth in the city, if we're looking at 30,000 more people coming to the city, we need to make sure that our police force is where we need it to be, and one of the ways of doing that is compensating them fairly so that we can bring people or bring the officers here that we need. And I'm excited about this because I think it's about time that Caldwell is actually the one that everybody else is comparing to and saying we want to be like Caldwell, or we want to treat our officers the same way that the city of Caldwell treats theirs. So I think this sounds like a great plan to me. And then I just wanted to point out or ask one question, and maybe this is for the chief or for you. I'm not real sure, but I kind of going with what Councilor Static said about being behind. It's my understanding that the police department's budget for several years, I don't know how long, was just the same budget over and over and over and over again. So there weren't a lot of increases. I don't know if somebody can verify that or not, but there obviously weren't the kind of increases that we needed to keep the department where they needed to be going, so that we were doing this in steps, right? So over the years, we were kind of increasing. Oh.
Councilor Register, I can answer that question for you.
Okay.
Are you there, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely correct in the assertion that, for all intents and purposes, the prior year's budgets have somewhat been, I don't want to say the term copy and pasted, but that's what it appeared to us. Since we've taken over the new administration and the new, everything that we're doing, we're taking a very, very deep dive, detailed approach, because as we all know, cops count, and the only way to look at the budget is line by line. And, there's no mistake about this, that, for example, the training budget was almost $70,000 for the entire year. That's $500 an officer. That's nothing. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, that doesn't even cover the tuition of a class. And so there's really no price to pay on that training. And so that's one example when you look at the overall cost of a human life, right? We're cheating death every day. These officers are going out there, and with the equipment and the technology and the past year's budgets. And one thing I want to say is, people can argue that we as a city got a 10% raise last year. The employees got a 10% raise, and that's fine. But that 10% is still 16% less than everyone else in our county. The big agencies that are comparative. And so we got to look at things, with a microscopic lens and really evaluate. And that's really what we're coming into. I really don't believe that our predecessor and the former administration in the last, I would say, 5 years, conservatively speaking, did this. But I can say, as the leader of this organization right now, that Deputy Chief Sopolaga and the team and myself and City Hall and everyone have had a unified collaborative effort to really examining with a microscope where we need to increase this budget and to get us in bumper of the other agencies, knowing that those other agencies are going to get a 6% raise or an 8% in this fiscal year. It'll at least put us in the same ballpark for another year.
Thank you. So going on that, I think that if that's the case, that it explains why there's such a heavy increase now if we haven't had the smaller increases that we needed to have, like Councilor Static was talking about. And also, just quickly, I wanted to address the idea about other divisions and working out their pay scales as well. But we need to remember that fire also has negotiations, and I'm a huge supporter of the fire department. So they get a seat at the table, and the police department has, as far as I know, has not ever had that. And so in the absence of having any kind of FOP that has collective bargaining or anything like that, this is their seat at the table, and I think it's important to listen. And when the department heads are coming forward and you can see the officers in the room and they're saying this is what we need to be able to continue doing what we've asked them to do, then we need to listen to that, because for way too long we have asked these departments to do more with less every year. Do more when we're going to keep giving you less, and we can't do that anymore. We need to catch them up and put them back where they need to be.
Councilor Register, thank you. I would just echo the same comments, but also say, this is not a negotiating table and this is a budget workshop. I want to be respectful of everyone. And I'm not the union president, nor do I want a union for this police department, but I'm the chief of police, and it behooves me to have the organization's best interest to represent the best city in the state of Idaho. And I truly believe that as the 14th fastest growing city in America and the 4th fastest growing city in the state of Idaho, the 4th largest city in the state of Idaho, your police officers need a voice at the table. And when in my interview for the chief of police position, I made it one of my top objectives to be that voice. Now, I understand Idaho's a right to work state, and I love that about Idaho. But I will tell you, these officers and these professional staff have been suffering in silence far too long now. And the time is now, because cops count and leadership matters, like the deputy chief said. The sergeant rank, the corporal rank, we are very, very, very heavy on the expectations, and I'm a very demanding chief. But when we demand the best, the citizens feel safe. And when they feel safe, people come to our community, they move here, they have property taxes, they're contributing proud Americans to our community and our success. Businesses open here, people bring their plate here, and ultimately what happens? The city flourishes. We do not want to go to like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, or any small town in America that's just a mini version of those. You go across the city or across the town and across the Snake River to Ontario, Oregon, it's completely different than the city of Caldwell. We hold people accountable, and our officers are dedicated and resilient. And I just want to say I'm so proud of them.
I want to ask you one other question real quick, if you can speak to it just very quickly, because obviously the civilian employees get left out of this quite a bit. But part of the reason, why you're asking for another victim witness coordinator, which I don't think anybody is, I don't think that's what we're here about. But first of all, I didn't know that she wasn't getting paid to translate. Because can you just touch a little bit on that? Because not so much the translation part, but how much she actually works, and if she's how that works right now with only having one victim witness coordinator, and the translation part of it, because I don't know that everybody understands that, how much time that takes too for our civilian employees to do jobs that aren't really theirs.
Great question, ma'am. So Liz Godina is by far, and anyone can do their homework and their research. She is by far the hardest working and underpaid and underappreciated victim witness coordinator in the entire state. You go anywhere in the Treasure Valley, everyone knows Liz. Liz works 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and never ever asks for a day off. So, thankfully, with our new HR administration, we've come to the table several times to give our employees that are in those critical positions, like Liz and like our detective team, some sort of on-call compensation. So that's already being factored into the fiscal year 2023 budget. But I didn't think it was fiscally responsible at this time to come in and ask for all the specialty pays and all the things that the other agencies are making, because I want to be responsible with the money that we have. But to answer your question, yeah, she is translating. We have a 36% Hispanic community in Caldwell. Now, I can tell you that when I came in as a chief, I heard on more than one occasion, of a citizen that came into the station to report a crime, or was turned away to report a crime because they didn't speak English and we didn't have a person readily available. The type of employee Liz Godina is she comes to work and she will come in from home to translate if need be on her own time. That's what she does because she has a servant heart. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to do that, but in order to give her a break and in order to have a more fair distribution of resources and spread the wealth, we're asking for that additional victim witness coordinator. The other thing to that is we're seeing an increase in crime because people are trusting us more, like the deputy chief said. And if we have a 36% Hispanic community that has not really ever trusted the police, okay, they're coming to us now with problems, and we are fixing their problems. There was a report that was released last week by the ACLU on some systemic issues at the Caldwell High School and some other Nampa high schools and schools regarding the racial tensions and racial relations. And I can tell you that report was basically highlighted the hard work that we've been doing in the last year. And I was very surprised at what that report entailed. And that just shows that our officers are going out there every day, working hard. Liz Godina is another integral member of the department. She's going out there. And these are people that have never had a voice at the table. And so I'll reiterate what I said before. I'm trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible. But if that wage study comes back and they say, hey, you guys are 20% below where you need to be, our budget cannot support that. They cannot support that. I don't know if 6% is the appropriate answer, because just based on our own wage study, and we've been working around the clock on this, we are, AUC, we're 16% lower just here in the Treasure Valley. We're not including Ada County and Boise. We can't keep up with them.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Allgood.
Chief, you're doing a great job, both chiefs. Thank you. I just wanted to express, I'm in complete agreement with what they're asking for. I don't think they're asking for anything outrageous by any means. But I just want to express my concern. There are a lot of officers that stayed through this agency when we had little tiny pay raises or no pay raises. And those officers, the longevity was one of those things that recognized those officers' commitment to this department. And, we talk about, well, let's roll it into wages, let's do this kind of thing. That separate check, that check for longevity was, you're staying here and we thank you, and this is money, not your paycheck. This is extra money because you're committed to this department. I see real value in that, and I would just strongly encourage us to continue to honor longevity and honor it specifically. These people that stayed here through, there was many times when we got like a 3% raise. Now that we have the ability to pay these officers appropriately, it's wonderful. But I don't for a minute want to forget those officers who stayed here when they were getting 3% raises, and longevity was that thing. And so, anyway, the officers retaining longevity and getting that extra check is important, and I don't think we should ever consider letting it go away.
No, I appreciate that. And I think maybe just comment on, adding on to that is the incentive pay. So I'm excited for the future to look at that. I think that's important as well. I know that's been talked a lot about in the past, and obviously isn't there yet. So as you saw on there, I was surprised to even see those two things, to be honest, on there. So, and it's pretty minimal. So I know that's something that for the discussions for coming in the future years, looking at that as well and providing that, because if you're doing that extra work, then should be rewarded on that. So I appreciate those comments. Any other comments or questions for? Oh yeah, go ahead,
Mayor.
Chief Ingram.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, can I address Councilor Allgood's comment?
Yes, please go ahead.
So, and Councilor Allgood, I appreciate you stepping up and addressing this, because as you know, as a former chief of police, our employees matter, and you're absolutely right. And this is, I guess, the crux of my entire pitch to you, is that we have employees that have been doing God's work day in, day out through all the stuff that's happening, and they don't complain. And so it's actually more beneficial to them to place the to place the longevity into their hourly rate, and it's pension based. However, if they don't want that. They are opposed to that. And I want to support my line staff and my employees to the best of my ability. So that would actually save the city more money if we allowed them to continue getting it as the way it currently is set up on that separate check as a thank you. Although I think it's more financially lucrative for them to do it the way that HR and finance and myself have pitched to them, the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 31, has voiced their concerns to us, and we are listening to them. And we are, we have an open dialogue with them, and we're very proud of that. And so if that's one of the things that they want, and it's actually saved the city more money, I'm fully supporting that decision to stand fast where we currently are.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions for Chief Sopoaga? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Ray Lynn, if you want to come forward, I think there's a few questions for you, and I think you probably already know what those questions are. So, Councilor McGee out there, so Raylan was just commenting of these papers that she's handing out. Debbie has those, I believe, to email you, so she'll be emailing you these here shortly. So, and one is regarding longevity, I see, and this other one.
One is, the top one is a comparison. So,
okay.
I took a lieutenant, a sergeant, a corporal, and a patrol officer off our current pay scale, and compared just off our current pay scale, Canyon County, Nampa PD, and then I took what we actually paid them and took out their overtime. So this is actual hours paid for a calendar year. So I wanted to show you, with longevity, what people actually make. So, because I think longevity is important when you talk about in this discussion. The benefit is included in pay, and as you can see, Canyon County, Nampa PD don't really have that. It's part of compensation, and it's something that needs to be included in the wage. The other thing, 13 across the board doesn't make sense. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm gonna go on my little spiel, and I'm going to advocate for those lower tiers. I came from ISP. I'm going to advocate for those lower tiers. You're going to pay the people coming in for recruitment. You want to pay those people to get them in the door first 5 years, just like Canyon County. If that's what the issue is, recruitment and retention, that's where I see we need to put the increases at, not at our top tiers. Our top tiers are pretty level with everybody else. But our bottom tiers is where we need the money. And that's where we need to focus. And so if you're going to designate 13%, designate it at the lower tiers and not at the top, not at the higher tiers. Sergeant and below makes more sense. Lieutenants, maybe, if they go exempt, yes, we need them exempt. And then, yes, we will boost them up. But above that, you really need to focus it below patrol officers because they're out there doing the work. They're out there putting out, And so that starting pay, I will always advocate for that. We need to do that. And so if you're going to do the 13%, it's going to be tight because fire, I have the numbers. It's ugly. So for police, it's only about $170,000 to do the 13%, because the 11% is already budgeted. But for fire, $754,000 if I did the 13% for them. And I don't have that in the budget. They have to cut something. They have to cut positions, and that's negotiated. So I don't have that budgeted. So For fire, I talked to Chief Raleigh, and it's going to be a negotiation. So I just wanted to give you those numbers. But for police, yeah, we do have that $170,000 that I can give towards them for the 13%, to balance the budget. But for fire, with that negotiation, it's not gonna be a pretty sight. So, but I think you do need to bring longevity into the discussion because it matters, towards their hourly pay. It matters towards their yearly pay. It's part of compensation, just like benefits, just like anything else.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, questions from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Stoddard.
so I understand this, the 13% I thought was just for the police department.
That is, but fire can negotiate up to what we give police.
And who does the negotiations for us on the fire, from the city side?
It'll be me, Chief Raleigh, the mayor,
Okay.
Shelley. But they have a clause in their CLA that says whatever we give our employees, they can go up to that.
And when was that put in?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
When was that active?
That has been in all their, I believe in all their CLAs, if I remember right.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I don't remember that. Back in 2015, I don't remember that clause being in there, but, okay. So what you're saying then is, what are you saying regarding fire? Are you saying that, if they get, something near the 13%, that they're gonna have to cut something else out? Is that what you're saying?
Fire will, yes, because there's not much revenue that I could probably pull about $100,000 revenue towards them, but there's not much more revenue that I can give towards them. So.
Okay, so, and the cut's gonna have to be, in your opinion, what, on the fire department?
Probably personnel.
Okay. And how do we stack up on personnel?
For their new positions?
Yeah, compared to other cities. I mean, are we right there, or are we short, or do we know?
If I recall, we're short. It's gonna hurt our contract negotiations with the rural district for future funding too. So,
Okay.
Which I know Chief Raleigh's been working on, so.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to make sure we're all on the same page, so with that negotiations, it does have to come to council
It
for
does.
final approval?
Yes.
On that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure on that. So-
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
not like a guarantee. If you give the
Yeah.
police 13, they automatically get 13. It still has to come to council and be
Of course.
discussed and voted on. Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, Raylyn, publicly, we need to thank you again. Everybody has, but the hours of work gone into this and the intense scrutiny that you're under, I know is not fun, but know that you're appreciated and doing a phenomenal job. Just a couple of comments, and I think enough is being said by my colleagues as well. First of all, as much as I want to, intend to, and will support our fire department, what I don't want to do is penalize our police department
Which I get.
because of a benefit that the fire department has. And then the other thing I would advocate for is the 13% across the board for the entire department, simply because, in 2 words, recruitment and retention matter at every level of our department. In order for us to retain, even at those levels, we still need to compete. And so I'd continue to advocate for the 13% department-wide. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Register?
So I just had a couple of questions too, and then, a couple of comments and then a question. So I understand what you're saying as well. However, the whole fire department thing to me kind of comes off like a scare tactic. And I'm just saying.
It's not my forte, so I apologize
No.
if it's coming
But
that way.
because the fire department, like they had said, has to negotiate, and they have to be smart about their negotiations.
Yeah.
So they have to be, they have to be able to afford one thing and if they don't, then, they have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
But I want to also make it clear that if the police department is given their 13%, that is not an automatic 13% to the fire department, correct?
It is not,
Okay.
no. It
And-
just means that the fire department could potentially ask for the 13%. They can negotiate up to that amount. They can also ask for it in future years too, in their next
okay.
contract
So,
negotiation.
out of curiosity then, over the last, like, say, 5 years, where the fire departments come with their negotiations and have their raises, can you tell us how many percentage in raises they've gotten over the 5 years as opposed to the police?
I don't have that history, no.
Because I think that kind of goes back to the fact that the police department budget hasn't been increased over the years in the smaller amounts, which has led it to where we are right now with having to catch up. But also I agree with Councilor Williams in the fact that when we talk about putting money into the police officers, it's not just about the new guys that come in or the retention or the recruitment, because a lot of times they come in, we train them and we leave, or they leave, and the officers, sergeants, lieutenants who have been here and given years and years and years of service for close to nothing, they deserve this increase as well, because like Councilor Allgood said, they've been here for years without anything or just very small raises. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And then my other question was, so NAMPA does have longevity, I know because I received it, but do the civilians in Caldwell, do the civilian employees get longevity?
No.
Okay.
And I will say that the civilian staff will not get the 13% either. They are not part of the 13%. It is only for the sworn officers.
But they're still looking at the other, or what, is it just the COLA raise, or?
The COLA and then the 6%.
Okay. All right, well, just in the future, the civilian longevity would be something I think would be interesting to look at as well.
Can I make one other thing I wanted to bring up, so just for future thought process, because part of my job is to balance the budget. Right now, police and fire are both getting ARPA funds, and next year, ARPA money is not going to be available. Police has about 540, fire has about 480. So that money has to be absorbed next year by general fund. So whether that be, it's going to be in property tax. So I don't want to get ahead of you guys because I don't know if the next year's council is going to take 3% or whatever decision is going to happen or what's going to be available. But that money is not going to be available for raises next year. So I just want to make that comment that money's already gone. That money's already gone for new positions, that money's already gone. So there's $1 million already accounted for in next year's budget. So.
Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure you'd tell us if you had them already, but you don't have the numbers from county yet, do you? We're still waiting.
The final numbers, I
Yes.
just got them yesterday. I looked at them, but I didn't.
Okay.
I don't.
That's fine. No, like I said, if you had really good news, I'm sure
Yeah.
you'd share that with us. And so, but it
They keep
occurred to
going up
me-
incrementally, like it's not, they're right on track where they should be, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Allgood.
Raylan, again, I really appreciate everything you do, and I want to rely on your guidance a lot. I want to harp on the longevity thing one more time. For a very long time, we've gotten longevity, and I think the reason the FOP and officers like that have a concern about putting it into the wages is because then it inflates the wages, and council can change the wages here and there, and when it's a separate check in longevity, that's one calculation and it never changes. The officers know how much they're going to get, and they know when that comes, separate from anything this council might do year to year for increases. And so we, back in the day, we always considered it kind of a safety net. So no matter what we got in pay raises for the year, our longevity was that solid thing that we counted on. And whether it's distrust or just being careful, we never mess with that. Second thing is, again, the officers, we deserve everything we can do for the officers. But my concern is what you just expressed, in that if we move ahead with what we're doing, we're putting ourselves $1 million in the hole next year before we start. Mm-hmm. So where does that leave us next year if we want to continue to try to catch our emergency services up as a whole. That number you threw out there is concerning me a great deal.
That's why when I proposed the 11%, I knew, like, with that proposal that I was going to be okay with next year, like, looking at that number. And so that's why I proposed that number, because with my projections, I knew that that number was going to be okay. So, you know, it's one of those things that it's a lot of moving pieces. I have a lot of spreadsheets with a lot of moving pieces. It'd be difficult to show you, like, all the projections and looking at
So
them.
I'm sorry, can you relay your projection? If it stayed at the 11%, what kind of hole we would be in next year? Do you have an estimate of that?
So it ends up being like a calculation based off of how fund balance ends at the end of this year, where we go from there. And so it's every month it updates, like where we're at, how that looks like, one-time salary savings, how we're spending, where this budget, because there's so many moving pieces in this budget right now that I can't say for sure this is where we're going to end up. But I know that in this next year's projections, because I've already taken that into account, so I can't take into account that 3%, so that new annexation and pretty much the new construction amount, I'm very conservative in my budgeting, is almost all taken up in that amount. So right now, my projection is with the 11% that no, we're not taking any increases next year unless we do the 3% or unless property values go up, but or unless we annex more stuff. But right now, we can afford the $1 million, but, you know, because ARPA, because we have that ongoing. But the little bit more, it's a moving target. So it's one of those things that it falls a little bit. So like fire, like police, and then that fire one is just going to put us over the top, and it gets a little bit worse. It's like a cascading waterfall a little bit. So it's a moving target is all I can say. But I know for sure, like that $1 million with 11%, I knew that I was going to be able to project like that out and be able to afford it based off of the property taxes and how that was going to go. And so that's how I built the budget around it. I was like, okay, here's the budget. Yes, I have enough. So because of the one-time expenses that we projected in. But now because I'm having to take those one-time expenses and use fund balance and having to do that to do ongoing expenses, then now we're eating away at those one-time balances, and so using ongoing, and so it's gonna keep on.
Well, that's a serious problem when you're using one-time expenses for ongoing. That's some, and the other thing, just so we're all clear, because urban renewal sunsetted this year, we have a lot of new construction and a lot of extra money that next year is just regular tax dollars.
That is correct.
And so we won't see that bump next year that we saw this year. And so if we encumber next year too much, I mean, we could be back to 2% raises next year if we are encumbering ourselves this year.
Councilor Doty?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure but if we give the 13%, which is what the chief is asking for, then just like you're talking about fire, I just want to be clear and that the chief is clear, which I'm sure he is because he's been on the phone with you. And you touched on it, Councilor Allgood, that if we give you the 13% this year and it takes you $1 million in the hole and you don't have the money to cover the $1 million, then the police department would have to cut somewhere basically to make up for those funds. So I just want to make sure, again, that's on the record, that if you get the 13 this year, just know there may not be much fruit next year. So, or there may be, but I'm just saying it's also a possibility that there isn't. So,
Councilor Stoddard?
Yeah. Raylene, question I have for the fire deal is, did they get a raise this past year? Did they negotiate something? And what was that percent?
They did. They got, I believe they negotiated because they had a new contract. It was the 10%, if I recall.
I think they got what the city got.
Yeah.
But their new contract has a rate for October 2020, which is what they would be able to do.
So is it a multi-year deal? It
Yes.
just stays at 10%, right?
So it was 10% for last year, and this year it's it's included in the budget, and it goes from the lowest, fire academy is like 1.5 all the way to, I believe it's like 4.5%. So
Okay, so how many years have they negotiated?
just 2,
Just 2 years?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, keep that in mind then. So if they come back to you folks, negotiating team I'm talking about, and say, well, we want the same thing as the police department to get, I mean, that would really put us out of whack, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then a third question I have is, how much after we do all this, not including the fire department, they had theirs already, but with the police department, how much would we have in our rainy day fund after all this is over with? Based on the projections you have from the county right now, a guess. I know it's a guess, but.
I haven't redone that yet,
Oh, okay.
but after this evening, so probably tomorrow I can send that out.
Okay.
So
Do you have any ballpark figure you might?
it shouldn't change too much. I would say it would go down probably to about 12 million from 12.5, but it shouldn't change too drastically.
Okay, and we're still gonna, over and above that though, we'll still take care of what we want to do with the pool and some other things, right? We'll still have that left over
That
then.
is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe just kind of off of that, so like I said, and I know the focus here is police, and don't want to get too off on that, but with the fire, if it does go into, like, say, some negotiations, it'd be very similar, I imagine, to like with the police, where they were able to take, Canyon County Sheriff's Office, Nampa Police, and compare those wages and see, and that's where we can see how much out of whack they are. They're similar, I imagine we would do that with the fire, where we would look at Nampa Fire Department and others and see, are they in line with them, or are they that much? So I think that would help kind of, I think, what Councilor Register and Councilor Stark were saying is, are they as out of sync with their wages as the police are right now with others? That'd be, I think, a key factor in looking at that with those negotiations.
Was that there during their negotiations? And I don't know who was. Was it you two? Didn't they do that? Didn't they get wasn't it like 17% or something like that with the 10% and then another 7 or some? I don't know.
For fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe this year it's about it's about a 7.
Yeah, I think it was 17% that they got. And I think they did that. I think they did the comparative wages and all that kind of stuff already. So I don't know for sure because I don't work in finance, but I think that they are more comparable now to the other agencies, which is kind of what we're trying to do here to bring it closer. And the other thing I want to point out too is even if the percentage has to be discussed, I think there were other issues with the original presentation, like the lieutenants, like the pay scale thing, those kinds of things. If the officers want to leave their longevity the way it is, then I feel like we should leave it the way it is. But if we're looking at the rest of it, that's not the percentage. I don't think that that's something that we should be. I don't think that's a big deal. If we're going to look at the percentage to make sure it makes sense, that's one thing, but I just don't want to lose sight of the other stuff too.
Okay. Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The concern to me in the whole process, and for us, I suppose, as the council, is how compartmentalized we are as we address budget. And I think it's important for us to recognize as a council, going back to what I've said before, these police officers specifically have been promised over the years that the day would come, but we as a council this year, where we have so much more money, instead are choosing to add a lot of new positions and raise a lot of other things in budget, which is why all along I'd been asking, where can we save? Where can we save? And so part of the reason we're looking at this is because we've increased in other ways. And so that's just disappointing to me that now we have our backs against the wall as we look at this one compartment of this budget and say, if we do this, we are looking at, depending upon the numbers, depending upon what comes in from county, depending upon where we go, whether we take the increase. And there's a lot of moving parts, as you rightly say. We could be here next year and say, boy, it was the best year we've ever had, and we've got more money than we know what to do with. We should have given them 15%. But that's prognostication, and we can't do that. Raylyn definitely can't do that. we wouldn't appreciate her as much as we do if she did. But I just want to be clear. This is our doing.
Okay, go ahead.
Counselor Allgood.
So Raylene,
Yes.
I realize there's so many moving pieces, and you just got numbers from county. Is there a point in time, like a date, where you would have kind of fairly dependable numbers that we would see where we're at in the near future?
For next year?
Yeah, if let's say we do the 13% with law enforcement, and then fire wants to open up their contract or whatever, or even just the 13% with law enforcement, and we're aware that ARPA money will be going away, can we see kind of dollars, what that looks like at the end of the day? Will you have that?
Yeah, once I knew what fire was doing, I think it would help solidify it for sure. Because that's a moving target for sure, like that amount. And so, because that increases or decreases right now, all I have is estimates. And so that, and having the final, budget amendment, and which you'll see in a couple weeks. So between those two things. So it's not going to be this week. It'll probably be, you're not going to have a number probably till end of August.
Not soon enough.
I know. It's not what you want. And I, unfortunately, like, and it's not even going to be, it's going to be the most predicted number ever, because it's, you know, it's a year out, 2 years out almost. So, yeah.
I just had one other question, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Register.
The numbers for next year, for, the, whatever we have to use, does that include the 61 developments we've approved so far this year in their property taxes?
No, because for property tax and for assessments, like, it's whatever closed, like, got approved by the county to be assessed by December 31st of
Okay,
20.
so we're in July and we have 7,900 doors approved, 61 developments, something like that. And so that plus whatever we do for the next year will be added into the property
So it
taxes
has
for
to
next
be,
year, right?
it has to be, I believe, not only in process, but, have, like, occupation. So, like, have
Occupancy?
Yes,
in it.
occupancy.
Okay.
Yes.
But whatever happens with those plus whatever else is approved, once they're occupied, then that goes into the kitty.
By the end of the
right?
year, that will go into.
Or
yes.
if it does it next year, then it goes into the next year's budget and
That is
so on.
correct.
Okay, so, I mean, I know that those aren't reliable numbers either, but, with what we've approved, at least we're not going down. And then, going to what Councilor Williams was saying about kind of having our backs against the wall because this is sort of the last thing, right? The last, proposal that we've heard. At what point do we go back and look at what I mean, nothing's approved yet. So at what point do we go back and look at some of that and see if anything can be shifted to make it work?
Yeah.
We don't have time, right?
Not really. I mean, I think that's where the 5% plus the 6% holdback comes into play for those for the rest of the departments and the divisions looking at that. So that's where that comes into play. So separate from this, obviously, with this proposal for the 13%. So I see that kind of separate as that. The other departments would have that 5%. So that's still in the proposal is that 5% across the board for those other departments throughout the city, with the 6% holdback depending on the wage study. So that's still there. So that, adds up pretty darn close to what this proposal is with the 13%, that 5 plus 6 is 11. So that's still out there in the budget on that. So I don't think we need to go back and look at that. We just rely on that wage study to come in and do that at that time, would be my recommendation on that.
So is the chief still with us on Zoom? Like, can we just hear what he has to say about what she's talked about with the budget?
Yeah, Chief.
I am.
Chief Ingram.
Mr. Mayor, Council, but I just want to be very, very frank and very clear. And in my position, if I would have known that we didn't have enough to sustain a 13% raise for wages for across the board, I wouldn't be here wasting my time or your time arguing for a 13% raise for my employees. It's been my indication and my word for the last couple of weeks that our current budget will sustain a 13% raise. Now, I totally get next year's, but like Councilor Register said, there are 7,900 doors coming to Caldwell. And it's odd to me that I still don't have the actual numbers on a piece of paper of how many new properties are coming in the next 5 years. So I respect Ray Lynn and the work that she's done on this. But if I would have known the max that we can go for is 11%, then I wouldn't be here asking for 13. I'm not, that seems ridiculous, right? The other thing is too, is the 6% that's on top of the 5%, the holdback, that's fine. But our data has already showing that we're 16% on average behind NAMPA and CCSO. So if that's the case, that's even more, it's going to come back even higher than we're asking for. And that's not sustainable. That's why I believe, and Chief Sopoaga believes, based on the information that Ray Lynn provided us in the last week and a half, up until last night as well, when we confirmed with her before we did this presentation, that we could do a 13% raise. Now, we can talk about the lieutenant pay, we can talk about the specialty stuff, all that stuff is fine, because that stuff doesn't need to be solidified until the beginning of the fiscal year. What I'm concerned about is when the compensation study comes back, it's going to come back much higher. Now, if it comes back lower in some areas, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's fair for the city to compare the fire department and the police department, because if we're talking about equality, then we don't have a union. We don't have a collective bargaining unit either. So if that's the case, then we need to discuss other things. I don't want to go down that road. I would rather do exactly what we're currently doing, use all the brains and the power that you guys vested in me as the CEO of the company to do research, to analyze data, to take a deep dive into this stuff and see what the best opportunity is for us to do this. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts, but, and I'll end on this. Back to Ray Lynn's first comment about we need to take care of the line staff because they're the ones doing the work. Yeah, I agree. But let me just be clear. We are at full capacity, which we've never seen in the history of Caldwell Police Department at the rank and file level. There's issues that have us in federal court right now, that have us in prison, and all kinds of risk management issues that could have been avoided with the proper leadership. Leadership matters. Leadership matters. And if we continue to go down the road of not caring about the decision makers, about the people that are actually managing these critical split-second life decision-making opportunities, we're going to revert backwards. I've been the victim of bad leadership, and I've been the prospect of good leadership. And I can tell you, and I'm currently at the Harvard Kennedy School of Business with leaders from across North America, and this topic of recruitment and retention is one of the main things that's driving people in America today to not becoming, officers and rise through the ranks. There's been several critical incidents in the last couple of years since 2020, specifically starting with George Floyd in Minneapolis. We don't have that problem in Idaho because we are supported by you guys, by the council, by the mayors. You guys love the police, and that is something we don't see across the country. However, the double-edged sword to that is the officers are significantly underpaid for the job they're doing. Specifically in our agency, they are. And so I would be remiss if I didn't stand here arguing for their best interest and for the best interests of the city. Conversely, I don't think that it's appropriate for anyone but me to determine what I spend my money on in my organization. If the finance director or the treasurer or anyone for that matter is telling me you have this amount of money, then we are going to do what we have to do with that set amount. I've been told the whole time that 13% was manageable. If we need to cut positions, just like I didn't ask for those 2 extra detective positions several weeks ago in my proposal, because I wanted to be responsible, I wouldn't have done that. Now, if the council is going to ask us to consider cutting those 2 extra police officer positions, I think I would make the decision and the determination as the chief that yes, I would be willing to do that to keep the people that have grinded through the nonsense for the last several years and reward them and get them up to industry standards.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate that. Councilor Williams?
Thanks, Chief, and that's why I'm going to continue to argue for the 13%.
Okay. Councilor Sharp?
Mr. Mayor, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but and this is addressed to the rest of the council members, that we need to be careful on what we continue to approve in the future, no matter what their legal folks tell us. If they agree with all the ordinances and everything, we should approve them. And I just disagree with that because, like I say, we have, I think it was 7,900. Is that what you said, Councilor?
9,700.
Yeah. And what's that going to do with the police department? So, again, I hate to use the word moratorium. Maybe pause would be a better word, but we need to do something about that to make sure that we're responsible as a council and not get ahead of ourselves. And then we have to play catch up with the police department and the fire department to make sure that our city is safe.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or, yes?
Going back to the fire department thing, have they said, if we do this 13%, that they're going to then come back and do anything? I'm just asking if anybody from the department or from whoever does their negotiations has come and said, well, if you do this, we're going to do this kind of thing, or are we just assuming?
No, they said that they are wanting to open up to do negotiations already.
But we have a 2-year contract with them, and we gave them 17%, right?
So we did 10%, and then, yeah, it's not 17, it's like, yeah, over 2 years it's 17. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, yeah, Councilor Olgan?
So, Raylan, leaving the fire department out of it, if we just moved forward today with the 13% and no other change, how much one-time money are we using to get where we want to be?
So what I'm doing is so in your budget books, when you were looking at the breakdown, there was on the very right-hand side, there was that HI error, right? Which is where I calculated, I was using in my original calculation, the total employee and city health insurance, and so I just needed to use the city, and that's the difference. That is where I'm getting the money from. So I've moved that revenue, that cost, to police, and that's where that money would come from. So it's not one time, it's ongoing.
Okay, so if we go where we're discussing, we're not using one-time money.
For police.
I need to be clear on that.
So, no, I'm not, for wages, I would never use one-time money. I tried, it's never one-time money. That's the thing. It's never one-time money. Yeah. It's always ongoing money. It becomes ongoing money. So,
And so, next year, if we do what we're discussing here in 13%, it's sustainable next year. I'm not talking about any raises. I'm just saying what we're doing is sustainable next year without drawing down fund balance to make it happen.
Yes, because property taxes doesn't decrease. So this is based off property taxes. So what changes though, and this is what changes, remember we talked about sales tax, we talked about the volatility of sales tax and those types of things. So what can change is part of police's wages, total wages is paid out of property tax. But other budget things that come from sales tax could be impacted if the economy was to drop.
Right.
And because sales tax obviously is not going to, property tax is not going to increase that much, $1 million next year. We know that. Mm-hmm. That source of income, $1 million for police and fire, is going to have to come from sales tax that I'm gonna have to move to police and fire. So it's going to become a little bit volatile. So,
Yeah, Counselor Doty.
Again, I'll just reiterate that the chief, just like he said, just like you mentioned, that the 13% is not, or it is ongoing money, it's not one-time money. He's well aware of that, so if those things happen next year, then it'll be up to him in the good times and the bad, right, to figure out what he's gonna do next year, should it not.
Well, yeah, that's the
So-
point is we, I think we have to have some recognition of the fact that we're at our limit here.
Mhm.
Counselor Stoddard.
Mayor, thank you. One more. Question for the chief, Chief Ingram. So if we approve this 13%, you're gonna take that amount of money and put it where you think we need it the most, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question.
Yes, Counselor Register.
Oh, so when the chief was talking, he had mentioned that all this time while they were creating this proposal, which was like a week, that they had been sort of under the impression that this 13% was viable. So did something change?
no, nothing changed.
So-
Like I said, I did say it was viable. I said it was ongoing.
Yeah.
However, I'm gonna give you guys a full picture,
Uh-huh.
but I'm not gonna discuss fire's budget with police, obviously, so.
Well, if that, I mean, I just think that when you're talking to the department heads, if that's like a huge consideration that this could be the result of it, that might be something that is good to share. But I just wanted to make sure that, during this time that you've been talking to the chief, that 13% was, doable, and then something changed, or it didn't change?
No, nothing
Okay.
changed. Like, I've always said that,
Okay.
like,
And then also to just sort of reiterate that the developments that we've approved this year are not taken into consideration as far as budget next year or the year after that, once they're occupied.
yeah, 'cause everything that is part of the property tax budget got
Mhm.
occupancy December 31st or before,
Okay,
so.
gotcha.
Chief,
And-
oh, sorry.
Okay, and then just to also just kind of piggyback on, Counselor Doty's point that the chief is asking this with knowing full well that if there's going to be any kind of budget issue in the future, that he's then going to have to figure something out.
The problem is, and here's the thing, is that by state law, I have to have a balanced budget. So that's not the chief's issue, that's my issue. So by state law, I have to present a balanced budget, I have to have a balanced budget. That's in my job purview. So I understand that the chief wants that, but that's still in my job purview.
Is the balanced budget, or the
Balanced
budget balanced?
So, like, right now, like, it's not. So that's what I'm working on. Like, I have to move money around, I have to make it balanced with fire and everything. I have to cut stuff with fire, like, I have to make it balanced before Friday. So that's what I'm gonna work on.
That kind of takes me back to,
What
having the conversations. So when, if they were under the impression that it was doable, then I'm just asking that, then that means that you could balance the budget, right?
So I'm taking little bits of money from every department to allocate to police
I
to
understand.
get them their 13%. That is what I'm doing.
I understand, but
So-
what I was trying to say was, like what Counselor Doty had said, was that if the police department runs into a problem with their budget at some point next year, the year after that, the year after that, then they're fully aware that they then have to do something to balance their own budget so that you can balance yours. Right?
I would
And-
always work with the chief.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that, obviously, the chief, well, I mean, I think he said that he's aware of that.
Yeah, and I think he was gonna say
I-
something, yeah, go ahead, Chief.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully aware. I just want to make sure we're not, working on opposite sides here. I want to make sure that we're all in collaboration here, because the last thing I need is, Raylyn, you to think that I'm trying to circumvent you. I'm not. I'm fighting for this because these are the numbers that were given to me. I know there's been a lot of different scales thrown around and stuff, but I can tell you that I would not be here right now arguing or negotiating for this 13% if I didn't think it was feasible. But I also want to reiterate too that from what I heard from Ray Lynn, that we are not touching any of the other money. That's a one-time expenditure, like I previously heard earlier, for police.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from council members? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So, again, nothing decided tonight. This is a workshop, but obviously it's getting down to crunch time. So, need to have a direction given. Again, this isn't approving it, but just direction given for Ray Lynn to know. And I believe from the discussion that we've had that council seems amenable to the proposal of Chief Ingram with the 13% increase across the board. Is that more or less accurate?
That's accurate in my opinion, yes.
Okay.
It is for me.
Short of some catastrophe that Raylan might find between now and when it has to be set, but I think, is that tomorrow? Is it tomorrow?
No, we noticed out.
So, yeah, I believe that is the direction, short of like something popping up
Yeah.
that we're unaware of.
And just to kind of maybe go on that too, so when we meet, city council meets on August 1st, that's when that tentative is done. And you can go down, not that we plan on it, but let's say there is a catastrophe. You still have August 15th is really when it's in stone, 10 Commandments right there, not changing pretty much. So you do have that time there. If, like I said, we don't foresee that, but if an asteroid comes and does something, then you do have those 2 weeks. But again, appears that the direction of council would be to move forward with the 13% increase in that regards. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Chief Ingram, any last comments or discussion?
Mr. Mayor, Council, sorry, I'm just very emotional on this. Again, I've kind of been in the dark, just, remote. But I just want to say, Raylyn, Shelley, Sean, and every other integral part of this process, thank you very much for everything. And Council, thank you for bringing up, obviously questions. The last one after this. Mayor, thank you. I am down and supporting, the mission. And I just have high hopes for our department, for our city, and I'm super excited for the future. Whatever decision council makes on this, I will always support and do my best to hold the line. And that's what I'm about. So thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you guys allowing me to remote in and zoom in from afar.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you and all you're doing and everything. And Chief Sofuaga, and I wish I could name off everybody that's here. There's several. I know you can't see them, Chief Ingram, but there are several officers here this evening. And so we appreciate all the work from everyone that put into this, and to Raylyn as well. And Shelley, I know that there's been many, many late nights on everybody's end, I think. And so we appreciate all the work and effort going into that. And you have a last comment?
I have a little question. I know we talked about the 13%, but are we also talking about the rest of their proposal and then keeping their longevity as a separate check?
Mm-hmm.
That would be my request, is that we keep everything just because it's time sensitive, and we can always adjust things before the fiscal. My recommendation is to keep the way it is, and then we can come together and continue working on this because, things we have to continuously evolve, and it's an evolution. So I'm open to that, but for the time being, I think it's just the best decision for us to keep it as is at the scale, and then we can continue working, especially after the comp and class study comes back with those positions.
So we talked to a couple of members of the police department yesterday, and I appreciate your guys' feedback yesterday. The reason why we're putting it into the hourly pay, so it is a very manual process. It takes Cassie, our payroll technician, it can create a lot of errors. It's a very manual process, and it's something that we want to automate. And so putting it into the base pay makes it to where it automates it. Now, we took the feedback yesterday, and so what we are planning on doing is keeping the same formula, so they will still get the same calculation. And what we're going to do is, on a yearly basis, do a kind of a wage, what's it called, Shelley? The yearly compensation
Oh, like a total compensation.
Total compensation, where it'll have a breakdown of their hourly wage with their longevity pay shown and broken out. So they can see it broken out based off their hourly wage and their longevity every single year. And it will be broken out, not on their paychecks, but on this total compensation that they will get on a yearly basis. But it's something that we would still want to put into effect. It will benefit the patrol officers because then they will get it on their overtime. They will get it on every hour that they work. It just won't be in a separate check, which the reason we're doing that is because it is a very manual process.
Okay.
And errors happen.
I appreciate that, and I hear you when you say you're gonna do it, but I think that still has to go before council as well, right, in this proposal? So that's,
It does
you can change
not.
it from going from one check into their payroll without any approval?
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as this proposal is concerned, it does say to keep the longevity calculation and that their admin wasn't opposed to it, but their body wanted to keep it in one check. So I would propose then that with this proposal, that we do what they're asking, the 13%, all the things here on the list, and keeping their longevity checks separate, Chief Walker,
And that's what,
sorry,
yes.
Counselor Allgood had talked about.
That's what Chief Ingram said as well.
So I just know that we got feedback yesterday and they said as long as we kept the calculation the same, that they were okay with getting it into the hourly wage.
So we have, because I know Chief Ingram had mentioned that they had talked to members of the FOP, and they're here. Are you the president of the FOP? So could you speak to your officers about how they prefer that check, if they prefer that in one check or in their paychecks?
If you don't mind too, just your name real quick, just so those listening know who's
Brett
speaking.
Howell, active
Thank you.
president for FOP Lodge 31. So yes, we did poll. We had the meeting yesterday with finance, and we talked about a lot of different options. We didn't come up with anything. However, membership overwhelmingly wants to keep the checks separate. They want to keep them as an individual check that they get quarterly for a lot of the reasons that Councilman Allgood brought up, and we appreciate your support on that. We did talk about some options about what we could do in the future of rolling things in an attempt to try to build that communication. But right now, what membership wants overwhelmingly is to keep that check separate so that it can be seen, so that they can get it quarterly, they can use it for the myriad of things that they use it for, in the way that they've been using it traditionally, and not to change that in any way. That's the overall opinion of FOP.
Thank you. So,
And I support that.
go ahead, Chief.
I support the FOP in that, and Councilman Allgood. I really, to me, it doesn't matter, but if that's what the FOP is seeking and that's important to them, then I will obviously support that. It doesn't matter how we slice the pie. I think that's a good thing for them.
Okay, then I would also support then that the way that they have this listed with the 13%, their current pay scale being kept, their proposed positions and then the lieutenant stuff, and then keeping their longevity in a separate check. That's how I'd like to see it. Thank you.
Very good. Oh, I am, okay. Any other discussion or questions, comments? Councilor McGee, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay. Like I said, this is a workshop, so no final decisions made. This is just provide direction, which I believe has been given on that. And so that'll be incorporated into the budget. And then we'll be back here August 1st for council meeting. We were going to do an executive session, however, some information come to light, so we don't need to do that at this time. We may have one on August 1st, but we won't have one this evening. So,
So, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
just to confirm, just following council register, we're going to notice it out August 1st, right?
So we have the council meeting August 1st for the tentative budget. Is that the right way to put it?
And maintaining their longevity pay as it sits would not change the budget upwards, so we don't have a conflict there. I just want to make sure that we get what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because right now I'm factoring, overtime.
mhm.
So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, anything else? Okay, again, thank you to the many men and women in blue that are here this evening. Appreciate you taking interest in this, so it's important, and we appreciate you being here. And then thanks again, Chief Ingram. Enjoy your evening. I don't know if you're going to get a Red Sox game in or not, but if you do, sure you cheer hard for the Sox. And that concludes our
Thanks, Mayor.
workshop this evening.